Previously on Unscripted.
Every year on Pancake Day, every pancake is $1. So you can go and get like 5 pancakes, it's $5. The reason I bring it up is because there's a chain of restaurants called Sunset Grill.
Is it named after the Don Henley song?
No, but that's good.
You're listening to Unscripted with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today we're going to talk about the dumbest rules in sports. But before we get to that, you know how sometimes when I watch a show or you watch a show and it's good, you'll tell me about it or I'll tell you about it. Same thing, like if we watch a movie and it's good, we'll tell each other about it. And if we listen to a podcast that we like, we'll tell each other about it. So I think we have a responsibility to our listeners to let them know about these good shows and movies and podcasts. But we also have a responsibility to let them know about the bad shows and the bad movies and the bad podcasts that we listen to. I don't know. Do you think we should do that?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad ones. It's like, I sometimes we try to sit down and watch a movie instead of just getting into like another show where we know we're going to have 10 episodes and we have to invest time. Like, okay, let's just watch a movie tonight. There's so many bad movies. Like, honestly, like we haven't seen like a good movie like on Netflix or on streaming in forever. They all suck.
Well, I've encountered a similar experience, but not with movies, with podcasts. Like people send me links to podcasts and they think I'll like it. And I do listen. I do give it a try. And half of them I like, and actually less than half of them I like. The others I don't. But what I wanted to talk about today, just for a minute or two, recently I started watching 6 new shows.
That's a lot. Well,
and when I say new, like they could be, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, but I just started watching this week, so they're new. So I'm not going to get into like a whole long thing about each show, but I'm just going to tell you what I've been watching and where you can watch it and if I recommend it or not.
Okay, go for it.
So there's a show called The Bear, which is actually an FX show, but you can get it on Disney Plus in Canada. I don't know if you've watched it. It's about a chef who moves back to Chicago and takes over his brother's restaurant. Have you heard of this?
Yes. It's been recommended to me. I heard it's good.
So I recommend it. That's a good one. Another good show is actually, I think it's from 2015, and it's a Hulu show, and it's called Casual. Have you heard of this show?
No.
Okay. It's a 30-minute, to me it's a drama. I don't think it's a comedy. But if you go read the description, they might refer to it as a comedy. I'm not sure.
Right.
Anyway, it's hard to explain the show. This woman and her daughter move in with her brother, the woman's brother, because she just got divorced. And you're never going to guess where you can watch it in Canada. If I gave you 10 guesses, I don't know you'd guess.
Okay, but so I'm not going to guess because normally the Hulu ends up on Disney in Canada. But
right. Well, you can watch it on CBC.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, it's a 30-minute show. I think there were 4 seasons of it. And so they just started airing season 1 on CBC not even a month ago.
Okay.
The next show is a brand new show. There's only been 1 episode, also on CBC. It's a Canadian show. It's shot and produced and everything in Montreal, actually. It's called Plan B. Also kind of hard to explain. This guy is able to go back in time and correct mistakes that he might have made.
He himself made. Okay.
Yes. And when I say mistakes, like they're not mistakes, like something that he said to his wife and it upset her. So if he goes back and he gets to that same situation again, he'll know what not to say.
That sounds good, actually.
It's not a comedy. It's like a serious show. I've only seen 1 episode.
Okay.
The other shows, another CBC show called Canada's Ultimate Challenge, which is a reality show.
I watched the first episode.
Yeah, it's similar to what's the one in the States where they go all over the country and
it's
they
like
do
The
stuff.
Amazing Race.
Yeah, exactly. Although this one's more athletic though.
Yeah. It wasn't good. Like I watched the first episode and I like the sign of like if a show is good or not is like I watched the first episode. Did I want to watch more? Not really. So like, will I watch more? Probably not.
Right. Just have 2 more. So a show on NBC called American Auto. It's technically the 2nd season because they had like I think 6 episodes last year.
Yeah.
You probably never heard of any of the actors in the show. I don't remember any of their names. It's a comedy. It's okay. I could take it or leave
you
it.
like those. Yeah.
And then the last one, and the only reason this is on my list, because this for me is like nostalgia, because when they reboot a show, like SWAT or Hawaii Five-0 or Magnum PI, well, it's none of those.
Yeah.
But
okay, it's none of those.
They rebooted Night Court, which I used to love. Night Court.
I saw the first episode. It was
I used to love
cute.
Night Court, so I was hoping it would be good. I'm a little disappointed, to be honest. So whatever.
No, because the thing is, like, in today's day and age, like a sitcom like that, it doesn't work anymore. It's like it's very old-fashioned type of format. It looks okay. I mean, anyways. So I'm also watching a bunch of shows. My shows are actually shows that people have heard of.
Okay.
You really you go off the grid. Like, you have your really own specific taste of stuff. I tend to gravitate towards like what is really popular and a lot of other people are watching, which says a lot about our characters actually. More maybe I'm like, I really want to follow. I don't know. So The Mandalorian season 3 started this week. Highly recommend. Star Trek Picard season 3. We're only 3 episodes in. It's the best show so far I've watched this year. I can't get enough of it. When the last episode ended, I was like, I looked at my wife and I was like, I can't believe it's over. I want to watch more. I don't want to wait till next week. And of course I'm watching The Last of Us. You've obviously seen the commercials. They're nonstop for The Last of Us. It's everywhere. It's actually really quite good. So I would recommend that if you're into sort of a zombie show that really doesn't show a lot of zombies. So it's kind of interesting in that way. And a very cute show on Netflix is Wednesday. It's called Wednesday. It's with Jenna Ortega. It's like Addams Family spinoff or reboot. Anyways.
I never watched Addams Family, so.
Yeah, anyway, so it's really cute. I would recommend that too. So those are the shows that we've been watching lately.
Okay, so you know what time it is now, Skip? It's time to open the mailbag.
Mailbag.
Last episode, we did our favorite songs of 1993. Stephanie from Montreal wrote on Facebook, "Laid by James is on my list!" ! Some others, Pearl Jam Daughter, Linger, The Cranberries, Shine, Collective Soul, Sensuality, Bjork. Pretty off the grid pick there.
I like a lot of the songs on that list.
Yeah, Fade Into You, Mazzy Star, Heart-Shaped Box, Nirvana, and she said you can't forget Sheryl Crow, Leaving Las Vegas. I totally forgot about that. Was the year of Sheryl Crow.
I also forgot that, actually.
Yeah. Friend of the show, Derek in Montreal. So seeing as I'm disqualified from including the Counting Crows, my 6 would be Soul Asylum, Runaway Train, Cracker, Low, Radiohead, Creep. So we had all these. Gin Blossoms, Found Out About You, Slight Nod over Hey Jealousy, Lemonheads, Into Your Arms. I used to like that song, actually. And then Duran Duran, Ordinary World. I mean, I'd have to go back and listen to see if I know what that song is, to be honest. As the popular kids would have said, whoomp, there it is, about his list. He's piping up his own list. The other thing this episode proved is that 1994 was indeed the better year for music. I think I agree with that too.
I think I agree with it also.
I got a message from a new listener, Sean from Montreal.
Nice.
Just listening to your latest podcast, Tears for Fears was the best. Podcast is enjoyable to listen to and well done. I also like your VO girl's voice.
Nice.
And then you screenshotted a message that you got on Facebook from Harriet, formerly of Montreal, now living in Toronto. She was our next door neighbor when we had an apartment together. And she found out that we had a podcast, and she listened to our episode called Apartment Stories, which she could have been implicated in. Now, let's make one thing clear. The story that we told about someone's being able to hear someone's phone conversation on our radio, go back and listen to the episode Apartment Stories if you haven't, if you want to get the full story. It's a wild ride, that one. It was not Harriet. It was not Harriet.
No,
Harriet,
it wasn't
if
her.
You're listening, we never listened to your conversations. It was someone else. So that's all I have to say about that. There are some corrections from last week, Josh. I wanted to correct a couple of things.
Okay, let's hear it.
You mentioned changing the words of lyrics so it could be clean on TV, and you mentioned you thought it was the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and I had agreed with you, but it was the Rolling Stones. I looked it up. It's the Rolling Stones, Let's Spend the Night Together, and the Ed Sullivan Show told them to say, let's spend some time together, and they didn't.
All right.
And you may have heard in the opening of the podcast this week where we go last time, where we give you a clip from last time, and Josh, you were talking about Pancake Day, where you go out and eat a bunch of pancakes, and how there's a Toronto restaurant called the Sunset Grill, which has a charity event where they give a lot of money to the Canadian Cancer Society, right?
Yep, that's right. Yes.
Around this Pancake Day. And I said, hey, I wonder if they Sunset Grill named their restaurant after the Don Henley song. And you said, oh, that's funny. and then sure enough, I just happened to look it up, and I was looking up the website of the Sunset Grill, and right there on their website, it says they were named after the song.
See, I had no idea. I'm glad you looked that up. I did go there on Pancake Day, and I ate 5 pancakes.
That's awesome. They say they were named after the song, and they modeled the decor and the motif of the restaurant around like this California style. I don't know if you noticed that or you don't notice it or whatever.
I didn't notice it when I was in there. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. So
right.
I'll pay more attention next time I go there next year.
So that is listener mail and corrections.
We'll be right back after this to talk about the dumbest rules in sports.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Are you taking a month-long vacation in the stratosphere and you know how hard it is to hold your breath? Are you the cosmic kid in full costume dress? You've got a nice little place in the podcast universe with Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is your podcast for all things Bruce Springsteen fandom. We discuss his music, we talk about his tour, and we also talk to fans of other musicians and share their story of their passion, their fandom, and the way that their favorite artist's music makes them feel. Set Listing Bruce, a Bruce Springsteen fan podcast, is available wherever you find podcasts. Remember, there is magic in the night.
And now, back to Unscripted.
Okay, Skip, we're back.
So we texted a bit this week, Josh, about like what we're going to talk about, what's the topic going to be as usual. And, I've been listening to I listen to a lot of sports podcasts. I also listen to ESPN radio sometimes during the day. And it's crazy because we have, you have a crazy snowstorm today, right? In Toronto, right?
It's over now. It started last night and it ended before I woke up. So now they're just trying to clean everything up, which is going to take forever here.
Yeah. But I mean, all that to say is we're in the dead of winter. It's freezing here. It's full of snow. You would not think it's spring. But somehow spring training started in Major League Baseball. And the big talk is there's all these wacky rules. The bases are bigger. I don't really understand why they did that. But anyways, the bases are bigger. There's rules.
I can tell you why the bases are bigger.
Please, go ahead. Is it player safety? Is that it? Or
that's part of it, so that, if there's a close play at first base, the runner doesn't step on the first baseman's foot. But the other reason is, so now the bases are technically closer to each other, so it's easier to steal a base now, and there's going to be more stolen base attempts. That's part of the reason.
I guarantee you there won't be more stolen base attempts. I think they think there's going to be.
No, there already have been in spring training. There already have been more stolen base attempts this year than there were last year at this time.
But it's not because of the bases, right? There's another rule about how many times the pitchers can throw over.
That's right. And that's also going to increase the number of stolen base attempts, because now you can only do, I think, 2 pickoff moves in one at bat.
Right. So the bases are bigger. The pitchers have rules about throwing over. There's no more shift on the infield.
That's the only one that I really don't like, the no shift rule.
And then the weirdest one is this pitch clock, right? Because there's a lot of mini rules within this pitch clock. You have to pitch within a certain amount of time. The batter has to be in the box within the first 9 seconds. The pitcher has to throw within 15 or whatever the number is. And there's already been some weird stuff. Did you see the other day, what happened to Max Scherzer? He completely, they got 8 runs off him because he couldn't pitch because he's completely out of his rhythm, right?
So I didn't see that, but I have seen where players have been called out on strikes because they didn't get into the batter's box quickly enough.
Right.
And in one case, the game just ended. And I love this rule. And if these players I love this rule. If the players can't get into the batter's box quickly enough, they should be out. Go back, sit on the bench, and think about what you did, because it's not that hard to get into the batter's box within 8 seconds. You should be able to do it. And I love this rule, and I hope so many games end where a batter gets called out because he wasn't in the batter's box on time. I'm thrilled about this.
But I'll take it a step further. The batter should not actually be able to leave the batter's box.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. He should be able to leave the batter's box. But before he gets into the batter's box the first time, he's not in there. So he's got to get in there.
Yeah, okay. You still have to get in within a certain amount of time the first time. Anyways, so we didn't want to discuss all these new rules, because we could do a whole podcast about the baseball rules and everything. But then I thought of what are some other, well, you don't think the pitch clock is dumb. You don't like the shift, right?
I don't like the shift because, it's basically saying that the hitters are not good enough to hit the ball to the opposite field. So we have to help the hitters out and eliminate the shift. Now, let me tell you something. Every single hitter that's playing Major League Baseball has known how to hit to the opposite field since they were in high school. If they couldn't hit the opposite field, they wouldn't have made it this far. So just hit the ball to the opposite field when the defense puts the shift on you. It's not that complicated. And if you can't do it, or if you don't want to do it, then get out of baseball.
But you don't even have to do it all the time. Just do it once. When they throw a shift on you and you get it down the third baseline, they're not going to do that again, right?
Or they might, because they'd rather you hit a single than a home run. But whatever.
I guess. It's interesting. Are you doing fantasy baseball this year?
I'm actually not. I quit fantasy baseball.
Whoa, cold turkey. Love it.
I didn't enjoy it last year, so I figured I'm going to quit, whatever. It was too annoying. So,
So my son's doing fantasy baseball, and he asked me for advice on who we should pick. I don't know anything anymore. Honestly, I don't. So I told him, you know what you should do, though? I said, you should prioritize left-handed batters. And he looked at me like I was nuts. And then I said, no, the reason why is if the shift that they were doing was almost exclusively against left-handed batters, right? And that shift is not going to be there anymore. So all these left-handed batters that lost all these points in their batting average because they got singles taken away when they just hit a ball up the middle that would have been a hit, and now it just went right to the shortstop, those are not going to happen anymore. So left-handed batters could see a big boost in batting average. That's a fantasy tip from me.
You're right, but they could also see a decline in home runs, a decline in power.
They could. We'll see what happens. Look, I give baseball's the worst, right? Because they are the slowest to make changes, right? They change, they steer their ship like the Titanic, it's like a cruise ship, if you have to make a turn, it takes an hour to make a 1 degree turn, So finally, look at the league. What's the most successful league in the world? It's the NFL. You can argue why or why not, and there's many reasons, but the NFL every year makes changes to the rules. They have a rules committee that meets every year. They said what rules not working, what rules working, and they make changes. The Eagles this year did this quarterback sneak where they line up 2 running backs behind Jalen Hurts, and they literally push his butt, and they push him in the butt. They call it the tush push, right? They push him for the 1 yard. And as made famous by the Kelsey's podcast, it worked 92% of the time. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to ban that move, right? It could be a player safety issue, whatever, or it's just a competitive issue, if you can do a play that automatically works, then it's maybe not fair, right? So these are the kind of things that successful leagues do. But now we're going to talk about things that successful leagues are not doing, because we're going to talk about our 5 dumbest rules in sports. Do you have a good list? How do you feel about your list? I feel good about mine.
My list is okay. There's really only, I guess, there are 3 rules on my list that really annoy me.
Yeah.
And then I was able to find 2 more to add to the list.
Okay. I figured that, I know that you like when we do negative lists.
Yes, that's true. And
so
I do.
I figured you'd be all over this one,
It's not that I'm not all over it, just I couldn't think of more than 5 that I thought were dumb. Now, by the way, before I get to my list, before you get to yours, I know you haven't watched any XFL football, but they have some really good rules in that league, just so you know.
Yeah.
For example, I was watching 5 minutes of a game, and there was a team that was down by 12 or something with 2 minutes left. And they actually ended up winning the game because they scored a touchdown, which gave them 6. Then they went for a 3-point convert. So now they're only down by 3. And then they ended up winning the game. So, like, the fact that you can actually do that.
What's a 3-point convert?
It's just like a 2-point convert, but it's further away. And so you have to decide. Do you want to do the 1-point convert, the 2-point convert, or the 3-point convert?
The NFL's not going to do the 3-point convert.
The NFL's not going to do any of these things because they don't want to admit that the XFL has good ideas.
But yeah, that is true. That is true. All right, so let's get into our list. I'll start if you want.
Yes, please.
Number 5.
So number 5 for me, I mean, I'm thinking this is probably on your list. It's in baseball, the designated hitter.
So I didn't know if that's technically a rule or not. So it's not on my list.
Yeah, okay. So this is where we sometimes run into trouble because we don't set the ground rules often. Like there might be some things in my list that you might not consider rules, but they are things that happen in the sport that could be changed, so I consider it a rule. So the designated hitter, it started in the American League in 1973. So before that, pitchers used to hit in both leagues. And then in 2022, Major League Baseball said, hey, we've got this dumb rule. Let's apply it to the National League also. So that's what they did. So now this designated hitter is all the time, and pitchers never hit, ever. It really was what made the two leagues different, right? Like, even when there was interleague play, there was still two distinct leagues because one had the designated hitter and one had the pitchers hitting. People are going to say, well, like people like me that complain about the designated hitter, people are going to say, oh yeah, it's like old timers, people that don't want change, and that's true. I like the game how it was. I don't like it how it is now. And I think pitchers should be able to hit. We've talked about it many times. Every single pitcher in the Major League Baseball was the best player on their high school team, and they also played shortstop on their high school team. Every single one of them. Right? So every single pitcher within 5 years before they made it to the major leagues were amazing hitters. And then all of a sudden forgot how to hit because they didn't do it anymore. I don't get it. Anyways.
So, I mean, had I thought of this, I would have put it on my list because I don't like the designated hitter. I think the pitcher should be allowed to hit because now that you have the designated hitter in both leagues, it just removes so much strategy. The manager
100%.
in the National League always used to have to think, okay, I'd like to pinch hit for my pitcher now because I need some runs, but if I take him out, then I have to go to my bullpen and my bullpen might suck. So what do I do? Whereas you don't have that problem in the American League, and now you don't have that problem in the National League. So there's really no strategy in the American League. You set your lineup, and you could pretty much just put it in for 162 games, and then you don't have to think about it. So
they don't need managers. ChatGPT could be the managers.
Well, the truth is now no team really has a manager. Every team has a puppet who manages from his basement. So actually, it probably works better for those guys because they wouldn't know what to do anyway. By the way, the funniest thing was always when I used to watch games between an American League team and a National League team, like in the World Series, let's say.
Yeah.
We grew up watching National League baseball, so we know what the double switch is. Like I can explain that to you in my sleep. I don't need to explain it to you because you understand it. But you would always see like these American League managers making the double switch. They would be confused. They wouldn't know what they were doing. It's like, It's not that complicated. Anyway, it was too funny. So
yeah,
I agree with you. That would have been on my list had I thought of it. Okay, so the first rule on my list, I'm not even sure I understand this rule. So you're going to have to explain it to me. I think it's called the 10-second runoff rule in the NFL. And I will tell you what I think it is, and then you could tell me that I'm wrong.
I don't know for sure that I know, but I think I know.
So basically, if you challenge a play or if a play gets challenged in the last 2 minutes, I don't know if it's the last 2 minutes of each half or just the last 2 minutes of the game, and it turns out that you won the challenge, you're correct.
No, but it's not about challenge, Josh, because there's no challenge in the last 2 minutes of a game. It can't be about a challenge.
but the league can review.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not talking about challenge. I'm talking about a league review where they review the play and they overturn the play.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, they overturn the play. So it's like one team has an advantage because the play was overturned. But even though they get the advantage, you now have to run the clock for 10 seconds because had they made the correct call, the clock would have continued running.
Well, I mean, you just explained it. Like if they would have made the correct call, the teams would have to run up to the line. The ref would have to spot the ball.
The problem is, if there's less than 10 seconds in the game, or even if there's, I don't know, let's say 20 seconds in the game, if you have to run 10 seconds off, then the team that's behind that's trying to win, they're screwed. Because you're just wasting 10 seconds.
I know, but this doesn't happen. How often does this happen? I mean,
I don't know. I saw it happen a few times. I'm like, what a dumb rule. Why would they do that?
It's trying to make it fair. It's trying to make it fair. It's in the spirit of getting the call right, so I applaud them for that. But maybe they could go about it maybe in a different way. Yeah. Because if they just stop the clock, if they say the clock stops on a challenge, then it's a total advantage for the other side,
But you have to stop the clock if you're reviewing the play. You don't have a choice.
Well, it's as if the clock is like temporarily stopped, right? And then it would have to continue as soon as the challenge is done, So, all right, I get you on that.
Number 4.
Number 4, I'm staying with the National Football League. Now, this is not exactly a rule, but it's more of a pet peeve. But it is a kind of a rule because the refs do it. So it has to be, they are instructed in some way to do this. Now, Mark from Philadelphia, if you're listening, we've been talking about this for 30 years, maybe more. The spot of the ball. Now, I know the refs do their best to spot the ball, but how the hell can they know? There's 6 300-pound guys piled up, and somehow they take the ball and they put it on a spot. That's fine. They're doing their best. But the part that bothers me is it's now 4th and inches, and one of the coaches says, bring out the sticks. We need to check. So they check, and they see that they're 1 inch short of getting the first down. But the problem is, 2 plays before, the spot of the ball was completely arbitrary. It was like, it can't be within an inch of accuracy that they need to measure the inch. So, look, I don't know if there's a better way. I don't know what other way there is. All I know is that infuriates me because it's just doesn't seem right.
So on my honorable mentions, I had the chains, the first down chains. Because in addition to what you're saying, everything you're saying is correct. But those 2 people who run the chains out from the sideline to the actual spot, as they're running, they're moving a little bit. So they might not even be putting the chains in the right place.
Well, they put that red line, like that orange flag on the ground, like a strip. And that's where they're supposed to plant their flag. And I guess they're supposed to, they must be instructed about where to put the stick at the front of the strip.
But it could be off by an inch or 2. And sometimes that's the difference between a first down or not.
100%. 100%. I still don't get it. Look, bajillion people watch the NFL every week. And that's great. But I just find this really funny.
I'm with you. I'm with you on both of yours so far. Okay, so next for me is from the NHL and actually most hockey leagues. They, for the last, 10 years, maybe even more, they've had this trapezoid in each corner of the hockey rink where the goalie is not allowed to play the puck. And I think this rule was put in because they wanted to increase offense. But I don't really understand how not allowing the goalie to wander out of his net will increase offense. If anything, it decreases offense because now he's closer to his net and less chance for him to make a mistake. I don't really get the whole trapezoid thing. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I just think it's dumb.
Number 3.
Well, I can tell you, number 3 on my list is the trapezoid, and I don't like it because it's number 3 on my list. It started in 2004-2005 season.
Okay, so it's 20 years almost.
Yeah. I think a lot of people call it the Martin Brodeur rule, right? Because he was the first goalie that would wander out of the net, and he was so good at handling the puck, right? And I hear what you're saying. They think it's going to increase offense because seemed like it was unfair because the goalie becomes like an extra defenseman, so when the puck goes in the corner, the goalie goes out, he stops it, whatever. But like you're saying, the goalie is 10, 20 feet away from his net now. The net's wide open, right? So this is why I don't like the rule. You can argue that it's more offense, less offense, that it's going to create scoring, whatever. That doesn't matter to me. You had a guy, well, now there's many goalies, but it first started with Martin Brodeur, who was really good. He had a skill. He was great at this skill that was important for his position. And then the league said, no, 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 no. You're too good. You're too good at that. Goalies are too good at that. So we have to stop them. It's like, imagine like Connor McDavid. He's too fast. So when Connor McDavid's on the ice, he has to skate only in certain areas and he can't go in other areas. Like, it's penalizing players for being good at their sport, right? Like, that's not the right way to go about it. And we're so used to it because it's been around for 20 years. We know the goalies can't go out of the little area. God forbid they go out of the trapezoid. It's a big problem, you know. Anyways, that's the trapezoid.
Okay. The next one on my list is going to be very difficult for me to explain in an audio podcast, and it's also going to be very controversial, I think.
Okay.
So it's going to take a while, so give me a minute. It's the
What
touchdown.
sport?
It's the touchdown rule in the NFL, and I have two very specific examples of what I'm talking about.
But are you talking about like how the ball has to cross the plane? Is that
Yes, I am. So let me get to that.
You
There's
mentioned this before, I think.
I've mentioned it to other people, and every person I mention to thinks I'm nuts. But I'll try to explain it. There's two situations: one where it is a touchdown, and one where it isn't a touchdown. So let's do the one where it is a touchdown. First of all, the player's got the ball. He's running towards the end zone. Obviously, there's defenders in his way, so he dives, and the nose of the football touches that orange pylon, and they call it a touchdown because that is the rule. It's a touchdown. Meanwhile, the player himself, he was never in the end zone. In fact, when he lands, he's probably landing out of bounds. But according to the rule, if the nose of the football touches that orange pylon, it's a touchdown. To me, I think that's the dumbest rule because at the bare minimum, at least half of the player or part of the player should at least have to be in the end zone for the touchdown to be legit.
But then you'd have to have this other set of rules defining how much of the player has to be in. Is it 1 foot? Is it 2 feet? Does he have to be down in the end zone? Like, what is it?
Well, so then it's just similar. Like, I mean, in the NFL, it's 2 feet, but in the CFL, it's 1 foot. In the NCAA, it's 1 foot, to be a legit complete catch. So I'm saying if you're running into the end zone, the minute you take a step in to the end zone, that's it. It's a touchdown as soon as you cross the plane. But in this instance, he never crosses the plane, and yet they call it a touchdown.
But what about like a running back on the 1 yard line? They hand him the ball. He runs right up the middle. Like, what would be a touchdown in that situation? He would have to be fully in the end zone. His feet, he would have to be down. Like what?
Not fully, but like now what they do is they sort of just jump and they dive. And as long as the football crosses the plane, they call it a touchdown. I think that's silly. I think he needs to at least cross the line, whether it's his arms or one leg or whatever.
But what I'm saying is, when you're saying he needs to cross the line, how much of him? You're just creating more problems.
Any part of him. As the minute any part of him crosses the line, that's it. It's good.
So then he means when he's diving over the pile and you're saying it shouldn't count. If he drives 1 more inch and his finger's in the end zone, that should count?
Technically his hand. Like, as long as his hand is over the line.
I think you're creating more problems. But what's the second scenario?
So that one I think should not be a touchdown, even though it is. Now, this is the opposite. This is complete opposite. So picture this. The wide receiver is standing in the middle of the end zone, like dead center of the end zone. He's waiting for the quarterback to throw the ball to him. Finally, the quarterback throws it. The wide receiver has to jump to catch the ball. He jumps. He catches the ball. He now has the ball, but he hasn't landed yet. So he's not touching the ground. But if you were to put up, fake walls to simulate the rectangle that the end zone is, he is within those 4 walls. But before he comes down and touches the ground, the defender pushes him, and I guess half of him lands out of bounds and the other half lands inside, whatever, and they say it's not a touchdown because he didn't get 2 feet in the end zone. If it were up to me, as soon as he catches the ball, even before he lands, that's it. It's a touchdown. He's in the end zone.
So this is not about in the end zone or not. What you're describing is a bigger problem that the NFL has had, and they've tried to refine the rules over the last 5 years because it was a problem. It's what is a catch? That is what you're getting. That's really what the rule is. It's not a touchdown or not. This applies as like, is it a catch or not? And there was a really famous play with Des Bryant against the Packers. And anyways, after that, they changed the rule. And now they have a new rule. And the rule is the catch has to be you have to complete the catch through the tackle. So even if you land out of bounds and you drop it after, it's not a catch. Like as you're landing, you have to have control, and it's very, very convoluted and it's complicated. In the Super Bowl, there was 2 instant replay calls with the Eagles. You saw it in the Super Bowl, Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. One of them, I thought for sure they're going to call it no catch. Somehow they called it a catch. I was thrilled, but I still didn't understand why. And the other one, they said no catch. And in the end, these become instant replay problems because you're looking at it in slow motion with super HD zoomed in. Does he have control? Does he not have control? And it's really complicated. And unfortunately, I think because of instant replay and because of the technology, they have to make these rules because everybody at home is going to see it, right? So it's kind of well defined. But I get where you're coming from. I understand.
I'm basically saying that as soon as the player catches the ball, it should be a catch, whether he's touching the ground or not.
I know. But
and they're saying
rules,
that he has to have both feet planted for it to be considered a catch.
Yes, and then actually, if you want to take it a step further, in college football, you only need to have 1 foot in. But that's
correct,
a whole
and
other
in
story.
CFL also only 1 foot. Yes.
When I looked up the other people's lists of dumb sports rules, 2 feet in bounds is on a lot of people's lists. I didn't include it because I don't really care, but it is something that people do talk about. So I'll give you that.
Number 2.
This is a statistical rule. The National Hockey League giving an extra point when you lose an overtime game.
That's a good one. It's not on my list, but it's a good one.
This is a math problem. Like in 1999, 2000, they got rid of ties. Previously, you could have a game end in a tie. And hockey fans, hockey fans didn't care, but people made fun of the league. We're like, oh, how do you have games that end in ties? Meanwhile, all of freaking Europe, they've been playing 100 years of soccer, they have ties, right? In their leagues, right? So they got rid of ties. They said, we don't want to look stupid. We're getting rid of ties. So instead of trying to look stupid about the ties, they look even more stupid by giving an extra point when you lose an overtime game or a shootout. The problem with this, and I'll summarize it perfectly, I don't think it's irrefutable. How much points do you get when you win a game in the standings?
2.
2. So there's a total of 2 points available. Somehow, when a game goes into overtime, now there's 3 points available, right? So some games are worth more than other games now, right?
100%.
And what determines if it's worth more is if it goes to overtime, which is absolutely stupid. They need to fix this. Like, I don't know if they just need to. I don't know. It's no good.
So I agree with you 100%. It is terrible. And I said this, as soon as they implemented this, I said, well, that makes no sense because now you're going to be awarding 3 points in some games and 2 points in other games. And of course now you hear all these every year another team breaks a record for most points in a season. Well, of course, because there's more points being given out. So it's easy to break those records.
Exactly.
So you can't compare 2023 to 1976.
Yeah, that's it. I agree with you. All right, we're on your number 2.
So this one is a really good one. I really like this one. I could have put this one at number 1. So I think, I don't even know what it's called, but the NBA has a rule that allows teams with under 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter or overtime to advance the ball with a timeout. I
hate that.
So basically, if they have the ball, instead of inbounding the ball and having to dribble all the way to the other side of the court, they can just call timeout, and then they get to take the ball out in the offensive zone.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is completely ridiculous.
I mean, again,
you've just rewarded the team for doing nothing.
Right. You're rewarding them because they have a timeout left that they don't care about.
And you're penalizing the opposing team.
Right.
And you're not, and all of a sudden, like, I don't understand, the entire game, each team has to earn their way to the other side of the court, the entire game. But in the last 2 minutes, you don't have to do that anymore. We're just going to let you take the ball out at midcourt. No problem.
Right. Is it to, I mean, it's not to create more scoring. There was just a game this week. I know it was an overtime game, but there was a game this week. I don't know if you follow the NBA.
I don't.
The score was 175 to 173. It was a double overtime game. Like, that is obscene, right? Like, that is just crazy. But So it's not to create scoring because there's plenty of scoring in the NBA. The defensive game of the NBA from the 90s, with like
With the Detroit Pistons, yeah.
and the Knicks, bullying people and crazy fouls and stuff, that's gone. The NBA is all about offense now. But I guess it's to create like the drama of the fourth quarter.
That's exactly what it is. That's 100% what it is.
But it's so unfair, actually. You're absolutely right. I don't know why I didn't think about that one. It's kind of weird. Anyways.
Now, the first time I saw it, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because I actually watch a lot of NCAA basketball, and they don't have that rule in NCAA basketball. And by the way, there's plenty of drama in NCAA basketball without that rule.
Yeah, because when there's 1.2 seconds left on the clock and you're taking the ball out from behind your own net, there's no way you're going to advance, or the most thing you can get is a buzzer beater. But if you can call timeout and take it out in the offensive zone, all of a sudden you actually could make a shot,
Or if you're Christian Laettner, you could make a shot in 1.2 seconds.
Laettner was so good, he didn't need that. He didn't need that extra timeout, right? And Grant Hill didn't need that extra timeout to make that pass. That's a great one.
Number 1.
All right, number 1. I hope you're going to like it. It's a weird one. Why do you think baseball managers wear a uniform?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So I looked it up. There is no rule that says that a manager has to wear a uniform. That is not a rule. But there is a rule that states you have to be in uniform to be in the dugout. So by de facto, because of that, the managers, if they want to be in the dugout, they have to be in uniform. Now,
what about the trainer?
I don't know, but are the trainers in the dugout? Yeah, they are, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are. I don't know. Anyways, who knows? That rule was from like the 1800s or 100 years ago. So who knows what the rule is now? But
the only reason it would make sense when they had player managers who both played and managed, then yes, you need to be in uniform.
There were a lot of player managers back in like the olden days, right?
There were, and actually P. Rose did it too.
I just think of all these managers that are like 60-something years old. They're fat and out of shape, and they're still wearing the uniform. Like, I just wrote in big letters with an exclamation point on my notes, like Tommy Lasorda. How many times did you see Tommy Lasorda sitting in the dugout, his gut sticking out over his, in his super tight uniform? Like, are they trying to relive the glory days? Do they think they can still play? Like I don't know, but I think it's evolving, right? Didn't some managers like this year wear like a hoodie sometimes over their uniform?
Oh, tons of them do that. Yeah, a lot of guys do that. Yeah.
But I would like to see one manager just show up one day like in a suit.
So actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. I have a question for you. Why do NHL coaches and NBA coaches wear suits? Like, you're coaching a sport. You're not going to a business meeting. Why do they wear suits? I think that's ridiculous.
I think it's their personal style, or maybe they feel the pressure of doing it, or maybe the organization wants them to. But Bill Belichick doesn't wear a suit on the sideline.
Oh no, I'm not talking NFL. I'm talking NBA and NHL. Like you saw during the pandemic when the NBA had their playoffs in the bubble, all the coaches were wearing golf shirts. I think that's perfectly normal and acceptable. I don't know why they don't do that every game.
I think some do, and I think it's evolving. But yeah, anyways. So I just wonder about why baseball managers wear a uniform. They're not playing. They're not getting in the game. They don't need to wear a uniform. They don't need to have a number. Like, they don't need, you know what I mean? Like, they don't need it. They don't need all this stuff. Like, it's kind of dumb. That's why it's number 1 on my list of dumbest rules, because it is dumb.
It is kind of dumb.
So let's hear your number 1. Was it one that I said or no?
No, it's not. I'm surprised you didn't mention this one. So I've been watching baseball since I was maybe 10 years old, and I think baseball is a sport that I know better than any other sport, and I still can't explain the balk rule to you or to anybody. I can't. I understand that it's there in place so that, it sort of helps the base runner because they want to know when they can leave and try to steal. I get that, but I've seen some balks called in my life that I don't know what the pitcher did wrong. I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
Right.
And it's just oftentimes when you see a balk called, everyone looks confused. The players are confused. The umpires even are confused. The play-by-play announcer is confused. Everyone's confused. I don't know if anyone can really explain the rule properly. So I just think it's a dumb rule.
I think it probably started with the idea like you can't like fake a throw. You can't stand there and like pretend you're going to throw or fake a throw to a base or whatever. Like, And now it's become like, did the pitcher flinch? Did
his ear move?
did his foot like go off the rubber like by a millimeter a second too early? Like it is like a bit obscure now, right? That's why you hardly ever see it, right? It's kind of strange. But okay, I can get behind that one, Josh. I can get that. I don't know if it's number one, but I can get behind that. Yeah. I have some honorable mentions. I don't know if you do, but
the only honorable mentions I have are and it's not necessarily a rule, but I guess it is. There are way too many timeouts in both football and basketball. Way too many.
That's TV.
They need to get rid of all those timeouts. You don't have that in hockey and you don't have that in baseball, but football and basketball, way too many timeouts.
So, Josh, the winner of the All-Star game having home field advantage in the World Series, that's dumb.
That is very dumb.
The NFL kickoff, I think you mentioned the XFL before. The XFL has some interesting kickoff stuff. The NFL kickoff is useless. They might as well just not have it. Almost every single one is a touchback. No one runs back to kick, so what's the point?
Correct.
The jump ball in basketball is also kind of weird, especially when you get like a 7-footer against a 6-footer. Like, what? Why bother? You know, like you should have, like, the team should pick who does the jump ball, at least to make it kind of fair. And I know you're this is not a rule thing, but anyways, I know you play tennis. I'd love someone to explain to me, and I looked it up. I read the history of tennis. Looked it up. I kind of understand why things are the way they are.
What you're going to say.
But 15, 30, 40, love.
Yeah, I have no idea. I can't explain that one to you. I thought you were going to ask about the rules about bathroom breaks.
No, bathroom breaks, that's a modern problem. But like the scoring, 15 is the first point. Why not 1? 30 is the second point. Why not 2? Okay, 15 to 30. They've doubled it. Great. The next point, like it should either be 60 doubled or they're adding another 15 to make it 45. No, it's 40. Like, so mathematically, like, it just doesn't work. I was going to put this on my list, but I was like, I think I read up and it's more historical. It's something that started a bajillion years ago, 100 years ago, maybe even before. They're talking about this happening in the 1700s when tennis was played like on grass, like by the kings and stuff like this. And it has
by the way, if you have 40, you haven't won yet. You have to win one more point.
I know. So we don't know what that is.
If you win that one more point, what is that? I still don't know what that is. Is it 45? Is it 50? I don't know.
No one knows. I always assumed it was 60, but I'm really not sure.
I have no idea.
Anyways, that's a story for another day.
We'll be right back with some final thoughts.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Do you know John Hyatt songs?
Maybe you know them from being covered by Roseanne Cash, Three Dog Night, the Neville Brothers, Emmylou Harris, Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Jeff Healey, Bonnie Raitt, or literally hundreds of others.
Maybe you have some of his albums on your shelf, or in your cow-horned Cadillac right now.
I'm Jesse Jackson.
And I'm Sylvan Brough.
And we're going to dive in from A to Z. Join us on the Perfectly Good podcast.
We're going to discuss all of your favorites and uncover some forgotten gems, from Aces Up Your Sleeve to Zero House.
Rate and debate every John Hyatt song on the Perfectly Good podcast. Have a little faith.
Unscripted with Skip and Josh is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now, some final thoughts from the guys.
I mentioned that our episode before called Apartment Stories. This is what we recorded last year.
Yes.
In the episode, we talked about this thing where we were able to hear our neighbor's telephone conversation on our radio. This is in the 90s, by the way, before Wi-Fi and all this, whatever. I've been listening to fiction podcasts. I don't know if I told you, but I've been listening to a few of them.
I think you might have mentioned that.
I found a company called Q Code, which makes a lot of fiction podcasts. So I listened to a bunch of their podcasts. Like, I spent way too many hours listening to these things. But they have a podcast called Listening In. I'm not saying it's good. It's okay. The main character, Josh, is Rachel Brosnahan. You know her.
I like her a lot.
She's the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. That's her.
And she was on
right?
one of those late night talk shows this week. I saw her. Yes.
So she's the main character in this podcast called Listening In. And the premise is, it's a modern day twist on our apartment story of the phone conversations on the radio. She can hear her neighbors' conversations on her Alexa.
Okay, interesting.
On her, but they don't call it Alexa in the thing. They have another name, but on her smart speaker, she could hear her neighbors' conversations. And it turns into a mystery, and there's intrigue, and there's a whole story around it. But like the idea that like this is a podcast, and I'm like, man, we did this. Like we already went through this, you know. So
and that was before
it
anyone knew what a podcast was.
Exactly. So, anyways, if anyone wants to check out the podcast Listening In, I kind of recommend it. It was a good listen, and I didn't like the ending. And anyways,
Do you recall that we did our episode about siblings in sports?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know, this week in the NHL, Nick Ritchie was traded for his brother, Brett Ritchie.
Has that ever happened before?
I don't think so, but they were
think-
on opposite teams, and there was a trade, and they were traded for each other. Now, there were two other players involved in the trade
Yeah.
as well, but
Yeah.
there's two siblings that were traded for each other.
That's amazing. I think it might have happened with the Sutter brothers. Is it possible? Like,
It's for sure it's possible. I don't know.
I may be getting mixed up. Anyways, that's amazing. Brothers traded in the same trade. It often happens that a team will trade for a brother, right? To reunite
Right, because
them,
they want to
right?
reunite them.
That's what I might be thinking of, but with the Sutters. But that's pretty amazing. Speaking of the NHL trade deadline, what a nothing day that was. Boy, oh boy.
Well, there was a nothing day yesterday because the whole week leading up to it, there were a bunch of trades.
Yeah.
So
I felt bad for the networks because they put so much effort and like advertising, and they get like a 6-person panel to discuss every trade, and they start at 8:00 in the morning, and then they have no trades to discuss.
yeah, I didn't actually watch any of it yesterday. I have to say, I was too
I didn't
busy.
watch
So
anything. I didn't watch anything. I didn't even know what happened, to be honest.
I'm a little disappointed that the Canadians didn't get rid of some of their expiring contracts. But what can you do?
They didn't make any moves. They basically did nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? All right. Well, that's all I got for this week, Josh.
Okay. Have a great week.